Salutations people of YouTube. I considered not doing a Jurassic World Dominion review, but upon further reflection, seeing that there were already a few too many dozens of them beating the dead horse, that is the so-called awe and wonder of seeing dinosaurs on screen, being gone with each Jurassic Park sequel, none of them possessing even a shred of the imagination and ingenuity of the original film, I have decided to throw my hat into the ring. But that alone wasn't enough to inspire me to make this video. First there was Steven Crowder's retarded review of the movie.
Dead. She's already dead. She's already dead. 15 times she's dead. And that CGI would look bad for a video game.
But I think the most retarded take I've seen is Doug Walker's entitled video, wherein he let the just here for Godzilla mindset spill over to Jurassic Park.
You know what some of the best stuff in the movie was with the dinosaurs? Is when it's just them and there's no people around. There's one scene where Blue is taking her kid hunting a little bit, and I was saying, man, I wish I could just see these two hunt. I really think that's the next logical step. You have to take the people out of it, only have them there as food. Make the people the secondary characters. I'm really serious about this. I think you should follow these dinosaurs as they roam the earth. It's not locusts that are the big bad guys, it's the dinosaurs, and they're slowly taking over the earth. They're eating everything up, they're destroying everything, and people are still there. They're trying to stop them, but they're the ones becoming extinct. Why do producers think that the human characters are what we want to see in these movies?
Maybe because those human characters were beloved since the first movie. And do you really expect the dinosaurs, sharp teeth and non-sharp teeth alike, to organize an army, take over the earth, and carry out genocide on humanity, like Planet of the Apes? That's just silly. So instead of reviewing Jurassic World Dominion, because we all agree it sucks, instead of discussing whether or not dinosaurs should be animal props or characters, or portrayed with or without feathers in media, what I will do is a character arc study looking at the main characters from the original Jurassic Park trilogy and the Jurassic World trilogy, and evaluate their storylines from the beginning all the way to the end. And this'll go entirely on what's in the movies, so no external source material, no fan theories or anything. This is just what I can derive from the movies as is. So in this video, we will be looking at Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, Ian Malcolm, John Hammond, Louis Dodgson, Henry Wu, Owen Grady, Claire Dearing, Maisie Lockwood, Franklin Webb, Blue, the Mosasaurus, and even Rexy herself. If we start out with Alan Grant's story early on, he was in Jurassic Park 1 digging up a skeleton and giving a boy the creeps by simulating what would happen if a raptor clawed out his intestines. At his core, he's a paleontologist who likes dinosaurs, but after seeing dinosaurs alive for the first time in his life, he becomes a fanboy. But his fanboyness is short-lived when the power goes out and the T-Rex escapes and Tim and Lex are in danger. Arguably the first Jurassic Park movie isn't about the dinosaurs at all. It's instead about Alan Grant going from a fiancé who doesn't like children to a fiancé who believes he would make a good parent after keeping Tim and Lex safe. He may not be a superhero, but he does put his intelligence to good use. Knowing that T-Rexes have acute motion-based perception, he draws Rexy away with a single flare while standing still. In Jurassic Park 3, he acknowledges what happened in the Lost World. He's a good father figure to Ella's son, but he turned out to be a bad fiancé because plot. This subversion was enough for fans to rank Jurassic Park 3 so low on their personal rankings, and I can't blame them. He's hired by a divorced retarded couple looking for their lost boy on Site B after a skiing accident. Divorced because each one wanted to be gay, Mr. Kirby wanting to look like Freddie Mercury and Miss Kirby obviously looking like a middle-aged blonde lesbian. Other than that, Alan is shown to have PTSD from his encounter with the dinosaurs. The ones with sharp teeth. Not the long necks or the 3 horns. In one scene, he imagines the plane he's on completely empty just like Ichiro did in Godzilla's Revenge, but it has been hijacked by Islamic extremist velociraptors. And since Jurassic Park 3 and September 11th happened the same year, it couldn't have been a coincidence. Regardless, he is still a strong leader in keeping his party together, but unfortunately he couldn't save everyone in JP3. Cooper got snatched on the runway like another guy named Cooper did in Dino Crisis. The pilot got eaten and converted to one big pile of shit. A raptor snapped Udusker's neck. But Alan's most impressive feat in the movie was him drawing away a pack of raptors with a magic flute carved from a raptor's skull. Many years later, we may not get to know what he thought of Jurassic World or its fall, but he continues to do what he enjoys, digging up dinosaur bones. He's even shown to have gotten over his PTSD. His call to adventure comes in the form of Ellie, who needs help in bringing down the bioterrorist organization known as Biosyn. Since Ellie's an old friend and helped him escape Site B in the last movie he was in, he joins her, and their cause helps rekindle their relationship, and they might get married, since Ellie's husband left her for another woman. At this point in Alan's life, he is what I would call the dinosaur veteran. He's still a dinosaur enthusiast and the strong leader he's always been since the beginning, but he also learns a new trick from Owen on taming a velociraptor, just like when he tamed Rexy. And if Owen is in fact the kid Alan gave the creeps to in the first movie, then his character arc has come full circle. When we first see Ellie Sattler in Jurassic Park, she's digging up bones alongside Alan, yet her interest is more in ancient plants. She's a botanist. In a dinner scene, she asks how the park could be able to replicate an environment that no one was alive to see for prehistoric animals, and her concerns are fully realized when a three-horn eats lilac and creates big piles of diarrhea. Interestingly enough, Jurassic Park came out 1 year after third-wave feminism originated, 1992 according to Christina Hoff Sommers. While first and second wave feminism focus more on women's voting rights, education and employment, third wave feminism focus more on being condescending towards men and Western civilization. Straight white males in particular, because they are an easy straw man. It's no coincidence that Ellie states in the film that dinosaurs eat men and women inherit the earth, and brings up sexism in survival situations, quote unquote. But in the film, Ellie's third-wave feminist ideology crumbles when she has a dark encounter with a bull female velociraptor who not only wanted to eat her, but also rape her, and finds Mr. Arnold's arm chewed off like that chick's arm in Carnosaur 2. This made her realize that men have it so much worse than women. Men work the dirtiest and most dangerous jobs, and it's not just men who can be sexually domineering, which is something feminist ideologues cover their eyes and ears to. Throughout the film, she's in a relationship with Alan, but in Jurassic Park 3, she winds up married to some other guy and has a kid with that guy. But she hasn't completely forgotten about Alan as shown when she calls upon the US Armed Forces to rescue Alan and his party on Site B. She returns for the final movie when super locusts are swarming organic crops, gobbling up every leaf in their wake, but not Biosyn's crops. This raises her suspicion, and she calls upon Alan and Ian Malcolm to help her investigate. Her story in Dominion is akin to the plot of Dino Crisis and Resident Evil, the former being inspired by Jurassic Park. Like Alan, she still loves dinosaurs even after the horrors she has seen, and she still loves Alan. Ellie also meets Claire, and the two have a moment of girl power. Ellie is overall what I call the environmentalist Earth Mother. She'll bring in the big guns to protect the people and planet she loves. Dr. Ian Malcolm, played by Jeff Goldblum, started out as the awkward, funny, smart guy who complements the main hero Alan and heroine Ellie. Most stories have main characters come in packs of 3. Star Wars had Han, Luke and Leia, Pokémon had Ash, Misty and Brock, Avatar has Aang, Katara and Sokka, and the same was so in Jurassic Park. Ian didn't start out as a dinosaur expert, but rather a believer in mathematical chaos theory, the idea being that small changes in complex systems can have huge unpredicated consequences. In the first movie, Ian was invited to notice any shortcomings with the park. While his colleagues were in awe of the dinosaurs, Ian expressed skepticism of the park's ability to control the animals they were breeding through cloning, and explained to his colleagues that one way or another, life finds a way. And he was right. The dinosaurs eventually gained the ability to transition their genders in order to reproduce without cloning, because the holes in their genetic codes were filled in with frog DNA. Either that is a legitimate leap in evolution overlooked by InGen, or an utter contrivance on part of Michael Crichton and Steven Spielberg being hack writers. Your pick. On the tour, Ian and Alan conversed about having kids, stating that he has multiple children due to having multiple ex-wives. What a chat. He helped Alan draw Rexy away from Tim and Lex, but he did so haphazardly and got injured. Again, not a dinosaur expert. In The Lost World, he was called back to action when Sarah Harding was sent to check on the dinosaurs on Site B and sees that she's doing well with a herd of spiketails. While he was still socially awkward, since Jeff Goldblum himself is socially awkward, Ian proved to be an experienced survivor. He knew not to move when a T-Rex is near thanks to Alan Grant, and most famously he and his daughter Kelly fought off raptors. While his screen time in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom is brief, he knew that one day, Jurassic World would fall like the last park, and he was right, but it fell this time due to retardedness. When the dinosaurs in Lockwood Manor escaped, he ultimately accepted the fact that mankind has entered Jurassic World. Knowing that InGen was at odds with Biosyn, Ian Malcolm lectured at their sanctuary about chaos theory, but he did so to keep watch in the event Biosyn's sanctuary were to fall apart like Jurassic Park and Jurassic World did. When his suspicion is about to be proven true, he provided Ellie and Alan access to Biosyn's genetically modified locust program. He then confronts Biosyn's top guy about using genetic power to play God, and quits his job for good. And when the program is exposed, he and the other humans come face to face with the Giganotosaurus. But this time, taking into account his experience with Rexy and the raptors all those years ago, he draws away the Giganotosaurus successfully with a makeshift torch. This overall makes Ian Malcolm the master of chaos. Knowing that man can never fully control nature, no matter how hard he tries. Truly accepting the fact that chaos is inevitable, be it the arrogance of man or man temporarily becoming stupid. He happily comes to peace with living in a chaotic world, knowing how to survive it. Next up we have another OG character, and that's John Hammond, the romanticist in charge of InGen. To best describe romanticism, it was a movement in the arts and literature that originated in the late 18th century, emphasizing inspiration, subjectivity, and the primacy of the human individual. Basically they were people living a dream. In relation to Hammond, he at first wanted to bring fun and joy to the world with dinosaurs, now that the technology was there to allow extinct animals to reappear through genetics. But when the power goes out, his dream starts to shatter. While eating ice cream alone, he contemplates his mortality. Like the ice cream melting, he'll soon disappear into history, and his dream will die with him. And his aspiration was nothing more than a flea circus. In the end, Alan Grant had decided not to endorse the park, and so had Hammond, and they escaped the island. He was too old to go on another adventure, so he couldn't go to Site B in The Lost World, or in Jurassic Park 3, but by the end of the former movie, John had a wish for the world. He wished for everyone to leave the dinosaurs be, paraphrasing Ian Malcolm's line, "Life will find a way," to show that he has learned from his critic for the better, and he passes away in peace. While he's dead in the other trilogy, his legacy lives on whether or not his presence is felt. Jurassic World finally realizes his dream to show dinosaurs to the world, but like last time, Jurassic World is brought down by human error. Or in this case, retardedness, because a fat retarded security guard opened the gates to the Indominus Rex's paddock, and her foot was in the door before it could close, as opposed to exiting the same human-sized door he and Owen entered through. This goes to show that no matter how big you dream, reality will remind you that people can be retarded. In the sequel Fallen Kingdom, we learn that Hammond had a former rival named Lockwood. They went their separate ways when John wanted to bring dinosaurs back from extinction, while Lockwood wanted to bring dead people back from the dead, which the latter turned out to be somewhat of a lie, from a certain point of view. In honor of Hammond's legacy, Lockwood had a plan to transport the dinosaurs to an island that wouldn't be destroyed by volcanic eruption, and they would be left alone, carrying on Hammond's wish. But obviously that didn't work. At least he would be happy to know that the dinosaurs are doing okay in the Great Valley Sanctuary by his rival company Biosyn. Like Dr. Anthony Fauci, Resident Evil's Albert Wesker and Mother Miranda, and Dino Crisis's Edward Kirk, we have Hammond's foil in the form of Louis Dodgson here. He is overall the mastermind, the puppet master, the true antagonist of the Jurassic Saga. Working behind the scenes as a pawn of Biosyn, he hires Dennis Nedry to steal dinosaur embryos, but he ended up failing due to Nedry's stupidity. Hanlon's razor states, never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. Nedry may have been a fat idiot, but he was a useful idiot, not a retarded idiot. Before the events of Jurassic World Dominion, he becomes Biosyn's top guy, but most importantly, he somehow acquires a Barbasol shaving cream can with the dinosaur embryos inside, when it was buried under mud on the first island. Furthermore, this means that the 2011 Jurassic Park video game from Telltale Games is decanonized. In that game, you play as a long-legged pissed-off Puerto Rican woman also hired by Dodgson to retrieve embryos. The story is doled out as a glorified quick-time event, which really blurred the line between video games and movies before The Last of Us did, but you do get to see that the island was powered by geothermal energy thanks to a magma deposit. And the can gets crushed under Rex's foot. Well, I digress. He's absent in the last 2 Jurassic Park movies, and as far as I can tell, he doesn't manipulate the events that happen in those movies. While the first 2 Jurassic World movies antagonists wanted to weaponize and sell the dinosaurs, not realizing that they would be shit in a war, Dodgson creates a sanctuary for them out of Great Valley in Europe. But instead of weaponizing dinosaurs to take over the world like in the Turok games, Dodgson threatens the natural balance of nature by having genetically enhanced locusts eat local mom-and-pop crops, but not Biosyn's own crops. That way, he can control the market and food supply. People may say that's just cliché, a villain who wants money, but they seem to forget that greed is a common cause for all the world's problems, but more so that genetic manipulation has been an overarching motif in the Jurassic Saga. They also forget that GMOs exist, and there are companies like Monsanto who want to control the masses by feeding them unhealthy processed foods. In the end, Dodgson's conspiracy is exposed, and he meets a fate similar to his useful idiot Nedry. And the Barbasol can is lost forever. The last original JP character is Dr. Henry Wu, the redeemed scientist, quote unquote. In the original film, he looked like a young and smart Asian intern working at the Jurassic Park laboratory, and all he did was tell Alan that they breed raptors. That's about it for Wu in the original trilogy. In the Jurassic World movies, he has more on-screen presence. He has more experience in genetics at this point in time, but even he couldn't tell what the Indominus Rex was composed of since the whole point of it was to create a totally new and interesting hybrid for clout and ad revenue. In Fallen Kingdom, he's working at Lockwood Manor to create the Indoraptor, but he needs blue in order to leave an imprint on it, or something like that. He isn't evil, but he is mistaken to be a baddie by one of the heroes, and is knocked out with a tranquilizer. Wu then lets his hair grow out like Zuko did in Avatar, and he has a more character-driven purpose in the final movie. Seeing that the GMO locusts need to be stopped, he hatches a plan to genetically modify one of the locusts with a pathogen that will eventually kill them all off akin to Down syndrome. In order to do this, he needs to know Charlotte Lockwood's secret in genetic modification, like she did with Maisie at a very young age. It's a rather compelling character motivation to give to a character who barely had character to begin with. However, Wu is retarded in carrying out his plan. He has kidnappers for hire track down Maisie and Blue's baby and bring them to him, causing Claire and Owen to go on a Mission Impossible style journey across the globe, taking up about an hour of the movie's runtime. This comes off as villainous and soils any goodwill Wu otherwise has. But what if there was a way to fix this? Have Wu hire trackers to find Maisie, and when her location is found, have him come to her cabin with all the answers she would have. History of her mother. His plan. even justify Maisie's decision to free the dinosaurs in the last movie by letting her know that some of them have been gathered in the Great Valley and are doing fine and perhaps come visit them. Simple fixes like that can really help trim down your story for the better. And you didn't even need to shoehorn in Blue. Colin Trevorrow, take notes. Where the first 3 movies gave us scientists, mathematicians, and eccentric millionaires with childlike joy, Jurassic World gave us Owen Grady, a shockingly ripped member of Parks and Recreation racing dinosaurs on a motorcycle. So cool, I guess, but then I remember Chris Pratt was in Guardians of the Galaxy. In Jurassic Park 3, Alan Grant was able to subordinate raptors by playing a simple tune, so Jurassic World further develops the idea of subordinating raptors by taming them from birth. As a character, Owen doesn't progress in the first movie, but he does in Fallen Kingdom, where we see that he did train Blue from birth, forming the closest bond to her than her sisters. Claire calls him to find Blue on the island before it erupts, and over the course of events, his resolve is to let Blue go free. While he and Claire take in Maisie, who has nowhere else to go, Owen puts his taming skills to good use in corralling a pack of swimmers during a big freeze. In Dominion, he goes after Maisie and Blue's baby, making him promise Blue that he'll bring him back to her, as he's the only human she can trust. Owen then meets Alan Grant, arguably the guy who inspired him from childhood. He then shows Alan how he tames raptors, which he also does too. This tells me that Jurassic World Dominion is basically about old and new characters coming together and interacting in both new and old ways, which is really cool, even if the movie sucks. Owen may not be the alpha male Alan Grant is, but he's what I call the dinosaur whisperer, and Chris Pratt himself is rather manly. No homo. The female protagonist accompanying Owen in these latter 3 movies is Claire, who is overall the aspiring girl boss and mother. When introduced in Jurassic World, she's heavily career driven. Some might say that's toxic. That's somehow sexist, they can't explain why, but it just feels like it. But it is true that people heavily invested in careers don't have the time and commitment to start families. Then again, Jurassic World's release in 2015 was also the year kids who grew up in the 90s had become college students and indoctrinated into believing third-wave feminist microaggression safe space bullshit. Take notes, renegade cut. Anyways, Claire's intentionally autistic nephews visit the park for some time, but when they are in danger by the recently escaped Indominus, Claire's protectiveness kicks in. She's like, screw work, my nephews are out there. Even though she has short hair and has a postmodern haircut, she's in a relationship with Owen, so she's not a lesbian. Unless she's bisexual, which would make her a lesbian. Kind of fits, since she works with Owen and Zara. While wearing heels, she outruns Rexy, but she does so to draw her into battling the Indominus. Later in Fallen Kingdom, she works with both men and women on a program for dinosaurites, and her connection to Jurassic World has her be called up by the Lockwood estate to help relocate the dinosaurs before the island erupts. She's unaware of Miles's dark purpose, but when confronting him behind bars, he proves her culpability to be questionable, which is completely idiotic. Claire signed off on the Indominus, yes, but it was a product she helped create and was going to put on display on a legal market. The public understood what they were going to buy, as did those who were developing it. Miles illegally was selling dinosaurs as slaves and weapons with an attempt to run them through the black market, and he was willing to have people kidnapped and killed to complete his vision. Meanwhile, Claire pulled the plug on the Indominus Rex once a single life was threatened. Colin, where did you learn to write? On a phone? Other than that retardedness, people often say separated couples getting back together over the course of a film is a tired and used trope for whatever reason, and they seem to forget that relationships can be rekindled. They are socially stunted creatures. In the film, Claire and Owen get back together to help the dinosaurs, and they end up getting together to look after Maisie, who is left housebroken. Becoming a full-time mother in Dominion, Wu's retarded use of kidnappers for hire at least sends Claire on a journey to the ends of the earth to get her surrogate daughter back. While on that journey, she meets a badass black pilot chick, encounters a blind Therizinosaurus and a Dilophosaurus puppet, but also Ellie Sattler. The two female protagonists join the fight against Biosyn, and there is a girl power moment between the two that proves them to be capable. Again, old and new.
Again, old and new.
Whether or not human cloning was in Michael Cretton's original novels, it is a logical extension of genetic manipulation, since it's used to recreate dinosaurs in the modern era. And I think Maisie Lockwood personifies that as the flawless clone character, even though she's in the latter two films in the Jurassic World trilogy. I think if she were in the first Jurassic World, and with a couple of rewrites like John Lockwood creating Jurassic World for Hammond in light of his passing, the idea of human cloning would have been much clearer. As it is, Maisie in Fallen Kingdom was blissfully unaware of the lie regarding her creation. She was told that her parents were killed in a car crash when she was very young, and she's been living with her grandfather since. The truth is, Maisie is actually a clone of John Lockwood's daughter Charlotte. But Miles mixed the truth with error, saying that she was cloned after the car crash, which never happened. That revelation on top of John Lockwood's murder, and being chased by the Indoraptor which had a creepy liking to her, resulted in Maisie's loss of childlike innocence. But despite that, she was still able to sympathize with the dinosaurs locked up in the manor as they too were all clones, so she released them from being gassed to death, giving them a chance at life. So she's no different than Mewtwo from Pokemon. In the following movie, while being taken care of by Claire and Owen, and helping construction workers redirect a grandfather Longneck from a construction site, she feels that there's so much more she can do, rather than hiding in the woods from the world, and rabid detractors who think she damned the entire world, and is a villain. Much like Atreus in the recent God of War game. But through Dr. Wu's retarded kidnapping plot, she learns the whole truth about her creation from him. While it's true that Maisie is a clone of her mother, she actually gave birth to her through parthenogenesis, which is like cloning, since all the genes from the donor are passed down to the inheritor. Charlotte worked for John Hammond since the first Jurassic Park, which a subsection of people took issue with for whatever retarded reason. She wanted to clone herself for daughter to bypass her infertility, but that resulted in the Lockwoods and Hammond going their separate ways, because he thought human cloning was unholy and gay. Instead of dying in a car accident, she actually died from a latent genetic disease that couldn't be cured in time, which could have been sickle cell disease or Huntington's disease. However, she was able to modify Maisie through genetic engineering, so that she wouldn't die like her mother from that genetic disease, hence the name Flawless Clone. So with the truth, Maisie puts herself to good use, such as following Owen and Alan Grant's example in taming a raptor, and following her mother's wish to live in coexistence with humankind and dinosaurs, since they have to share the same world. The more I think about it, Maisie's character arc is similar to that of Madison Russell's from the MonsterVerse Godzilla movies, and also Rose Winters from the recent Resident Evil game. And why do I suddenly feel like Capcom has a writing credit in the Jurassic Saga somewhere? Franklin Webb's time on screen is short, but he's what I call the adult nerd. Doug Walker said that there was a dark time in the age of movies from 1996 to 2001. Every movie was a disaster film, be it Twister, Independence Day, 2 asteroid movies and 2 volcano movies the exact same year, and all of them had little to no story, the most basic of cookie cutter stereotypes, and the star of the film was always the effects, explosions, storms, lava, you name it. And the main character wasn't a macho alpha action hero but a survivor, the geeky beta cuck type of survivor. And Franklin Webb was the geek character Doug despised the most. Well, Webb in Fallen Kingdom was a germaphobe, he screamed a lot and shat himself, but I wouldn't call him retarded. Though he did knock out Dr. Wu for no reason, but I think he was trying to be heroic in knocking out who he thought was a bad guy. Naive, not retarded. In Dominion, when Maisie is abducted thanks to Dr. Wu being retarded, Webb helps Claire and Owen track down her abductors, which is not retarded. and the so-called dark age of movies cannot be true, because every single movie from 1996 to 2001, even the independent films at the time, especially Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, couldn't have been about geeky survivors. Then again, Dow Gawker is known for going full retard.
Never go full retard.
That sums up the human characters. Now let us delve into the dinosaurs that actually have character arcs, starting with Blue the Velociraptor, who is described as the Iron Man of the Jurassic World Trilogy, which is retarded. Blue doesn't have a customizable robot suit, she doesn't recruit other dinosaurs to join a vigilante group, and she doesn't have a young ward like a young and inexperienced Spider-Man. Anyways, before the events of Jurassic World, Blue came from a cluster of 4 raptor chicks and they were raised and trained by Owen. When Owen simulated emotional vulnerability, all the raptors took it as an opportunity to strike, except for Blue. Out of all her sisters, she was the one that showed the most sympathy to her caretaker. When they all got older in Jurassic World, the raptors were exposed to other humans, lots of them, which had to make them feel uncomfortable. Anyone who's played Zoo Tycoon would tell you that. In the scene where an employee falls into the raptor pit, Owen's the only one who can calm them down, but just enough for the employee to get out of the pit. Blue in particular is shown to be willing to bite the hand that fed her. They especially become more agitated when the antagonist Vic Hoskins treats them like weapons to be used in a war, and this results in them being persuaded by the Indominus Rex to turn on Owen and the other humans. How Dow Gawker knew the Indominus was part raptor from the start is a mystery, because I always thought it looked more like an Allosaurus or a Giganotosaurus. However, Blue literally bites Hogskin's hand, and she and her sisters fight the Indominus to show that they are still subordinate to Owen, Blue being the only surviving sister who helps Rexy defeat the Indominus. Carrying on over to Fallen Kingdom, Blue manages to survive on her own till Owen meets her again, and he's used to capture Blue for the Indoraptor project. Blue got shot in the process and was losing blood, but Owen stayed by her side, which would suggest she didn't lose all trust in him. When Owen goes up against the Indoraptor and runs out of bullets, Blue jumps in to help them defeat the Indoraptor for good. At the end of Fallen Kingdom, Owen decides that it's best to let Blue go free as opposed to keeping her caged, so he lets her go. Blue later on becomes a parent. She teaches her baby how to hunt, and it's really cool to watch, like Walking with Dinosaurs, the BBC one, not the theatrical one. Luckily there's a Cretaceous cut which has no talking, and is much better. Blue's baby gets snatched, and by some astronomical coincidence, Owen is in the area. She trusts him to get her baby back, which he does. So Blue is overall what I'd call the lone beta. She alone had more respect for her trainer, even after she set out on her own. There is no other character more lonely in the Jurassic Saga than the Mosasaurus. Hence the name the Lonely Leviathan. Despite her small time on screen, she has a character arc. All she does in Jurassic World is eat, but the only time that she gets to meet other people is during a feeding show, and even then she only gets to eat great white sharks, which are like red Swedish fish to her. How she got so enormous in the movie is beyond me.
There's no such thing as fat chicks!
When Zera is dropped into the Mosasaurus exhibit, she swallows her whole, letting her live inside her for a while. So as a character, the Mosasaurus just wants someone as a companion. A playmate. Though this can mean that the Mosasaurus is particularly fond of girls, so she might be a big bull lesbian, since isolation often drives people to sexual depravity. Just look at Catholic monks for instance. At the end of Jurassic World, she helps Rexy and Blue defeat the Indominus Rex, dragging it into the lagoon, drowning it, but no one thanks her for the help. We don't know for sure how much time has passed in Fallen Kingdom, but we can guess it was at least 10 days, since that's how long it takes for a dead body underwater to be picked down to the bone by scavengers. So the Mosasaur is able to escape a lagoon into the ocean thanks to an oversight by a team retrieving a bone from the Indominus. Even though the lagoon wasn't even connected to the ocean when looking at a map, but that's just one of many issues with Fallen Kingdom. Trefaro posted on Twitter that there are canals connecting the lagoon to the ocean, but that isn't even mentioned in the movie, and he was obviously plugging up holes in his own story. So once again, the Mosasaurus eats, but is now traveling the world over looking for a companion. In Dominion, she appears on an episode of Deadliest Catch, but in the end, she meets up with a family of whales, and they accept her as she's roughly their size. So the Mosasaur doesn't have to be alone anymore, and she can eat all the krill she wants like in Finding Nemo. And she would be perfect in protecting the whales from whalers. Last, and in my opinion the most important, is Rexy, who has the most compelling character arc in the entire Jurassic Saga. If we were to rewind back to 1993, Jurassic Park hit the scene, pushed the boundaries of special effects, and made dinosaurs more awesome than Ray Harryhausen ever did. Because of Jurassic Park, we now see Tyrannosaurs take on a more horizontal posture as opposed to the classic vertical upright stance. And Rexy being the first T-Rex of her kind in media, being the one responsible for the change in zeitgeist, makes her all the more memorable, even though she didn't have as much characterization as say Alan Grant or John Hammond. But now, thanks to the Jurassic World Trilogy, she has become a fully realized character. So when looking at Rex's story play out from beginning to end, actually taking the time to look at what's been done in all these movies, we see the story of a prehistoric monarch resurrected in the modern era who ends up reclaiming the title she lost long ago. Whether it's millions of years ago, if you're an evolutionist, or it's thousands of years ago, if you're a creationist, the story of Rexy began when a Giganotosaurus invaded her territory. We know from the fossil record that Tyrannosaurus roamed North America whereas Giganotosaurus roamed South America at the same time, that being the Cretaceous period, so in a way they were like rivals. The Giganotosaurus challenges Rexy rule and ends up defeating her in combat, ending her bloodline and dynasty. Jumping forward in time, Rex's royal blood is extracted from a mosquito, and she is brought back to life through cloning. Being a clone with a few alterations to her genome, she isn't exactly the same as she was long ago. She doesn't have any feathers, but she seems to still remember her status as a royal through genetic memory. The idea being that certain kinds of memories can be inherited, being present at birth, just locked in the subconscious, until they are unlocked at certain points in a person's life as Jordan Peterson talked about unlocking your potential. This is in contrast to the blank slate view which states that the brain has inborn capabilities for learning from the environment, but does not contain content such as innate beliefs. Like how else do salmon remember which stream they were born in when it is time for them to migrate and nest? In the case of Rexy, she doesn't meet the Giganotosaurus in Jurassic Park, so she doesn't recall being killed by it. However, her only predicament now is the annoyance of being an animal in a zoo, only allowed to eat small animals be it cows and goats. During the storm and Ned returning off the power, Rexy notices that the fence keeping her in is no longer electrified, so she breaks out and it's spectacular. Obviously she tries to eat a car like a large prey. One of the first humans she sees upon breaking out is the lawyer on the toilet, who is clearly a coward, leaving behind Tim and Lex, someone that isn't worth a royal's time, so she eats him for his cowardice. But there is one human who gains her respect, and that's Alan Grant. He gets her attention, and doesn't cower in her presence, he draws her away with a flare, and seeing that he tries to keep Tim and Lex safe, she commends him. At the end of Jurassic Park, seeing that Alan is surrounded by velociraptors yet he holds his ground, Rexy stealthily jumps in and rescues him and the other humans, giving them the chance to escape. The raptors prove to be formidable for their small size, leaving Rexy scarred, but she defeats them all and comes out triumphant. As previously stated, Rexy didn't have much characterization in the original Jurassic Park trilogy as she was only in one movie. In the books, she gets nuked unfortunately, because Michael Cretin was a hack. But in the Jurassic World trilogy, she's spared and given much more to do. We can infer that Rexy has gotten older since the first movie, and the film Jurassic World has her back on display, being used to being looked at by people as she eats goat meat. We don't know how she and the other dinosaurs got corralled after the first park fell. Nonetheless, here they are. The movie has received both praise and criticism from audiences. The praise being that it's the best out of all the Jurassic Park sequels, recaptures the so-called awe and wonder of the original, and fully realizes the park when it wasn't in the first movie. The criticism being that it's a cynical corporate nostalgia baiting cash-in. The story rehashes the plot of the first movie beat for beat. The characters are not interesting. It focuses on the humans when the movie isn't called Humans. The dinosaurs don't get enough screen time. It uses too much CGI and not enough practical effects. And Chris Pratt is as bad as Hitler because he's a white male. Side note, Black Pigeon Speaks once made a video describing the mid-2010s as evidence of complete creative and scientific stagnation, claiming that humans may have hit the upper limit in terms of furthering the human race. Basically using the Hollywood is out of ideas notion to address globalization or something like that. But the critique of cynicism seems to be exactly in line with the movie's message when interpreted as a sincerity versus cynicism allegory. Much like Godzilla Raids Again's message is clear when it's interpreted as a Cold War allegory. The Indominus may have been released because of a fat retarded coward, but its existence was out of the belief that dinosaurs aren't interesting anymore and audiences want bigger, meaner, and scarier, so it is composed of various dinosaur and animal DNA, all of which can be seen as the so-called Hollywood recycling machine cranking out adaptations, remakes, reboots, and sequels in recent years, rather than putting out truly original works that are meant to challenge and captivate us, so they say. So when Rexy is led by Claire to do battle the Indominus, she comes to symbolize the sincere genuine wonder that audiences felt when watching Jurassic Park for the first time in 1993, otherwise known as the primacy effect. Though she does burst through a Spinosaurus skeleton which is a jab at Jurassic Park 3, like Godzilla Final Wars took despicable jabs at Zilla and Gamera. Jurassic Park 3 fans must have been furious when they saw that. Anyway, seeing a vicious brute like the Indominus challenge her to a fight, Rexy accepts the challenge, but the Indominus Rex is too much for her alone. Thankfully Blue joins the fray and helps Rexy overpower the Indominus, and the Mosasaur finishes it off. Another side note, Films and Stuff stated in his video Jurassic World the cynical blockbuster, that it's wrong to celebrate the Indominus's defeat when she has been portrayed as a Frankenstein's monster, destructive but is misunderstood, and should be felt sorry for. That's ridiculous. That's like saying we should feel sorry for Shodaigoji because he was a misunderstood creature portrayed as an atomic bomb survivor with keloid scars. Are we just going to forget the fact that he nuked Tokyo, turning it into a barren wasteland, reducing the population from 1 million to only a few? Well, I digress. For helping Rexy, Blue is the first velociraptor to earn her respect, recognizing her as a faithful subject, considering the last raptors she encountered attacked her. Jurassic World may have fallen, but much like after Jurassic Park, Rexy and all the other dinosaurs are free from human captors. She looks over the island from a helicopter port and roars, and the movie ends. It's a magical scene. Unfortunately, their freedom is short-lived. The dormant volcano on the island Jurassic Park took place on becomes active. It's not mentioned why, but if I were to guess, it's because with no one running the island, there's no geothermal energy usage to relieve the volcanic pressure. Site B is out of service for whatever retarded reason, so the only way to preserve the dinosaurs is to get them off the island, but the plan turned out to be a poaching plot. Rexy and the dinosaurs are captured to be sold on the black market. This is historically analogous to African royals who were conquered by fellow African tribes and Muslim caliphates and shipped off to the Americas to be sold in the Atlantic slave trade. But akin to slave uprisings, Rexy escapes captivity and being gassed to death thanks to Maisie Lockwood, and she finishes off Miles, the mastermind behind the dinosaur slave trade. As seen in the final movie's prologue both online and in the extended cut, Rexy is on the run. She's a royal, but has no dominion to lord over. Eventually she's corralled and placed into Biocin's Great Valley Sanctuary. But there she stumbles upon the Giganotosaurus for the first time in her new life, and her instinctual response is seeing it as a rival. Side note, Colin Trevorrow had the gall to say that the Giganotosaurus is the Joker of the movie, and that makes Rexy like Batman, but that is completely retarded. The Giganotosaurus isn't as cartoonishly evil as the Adam West Joker or Tim Burton's Joker, not as chaotic evil as the Dark Knight's Joker, not as cringy as Jared Leto, nor as anti-heroic as Walking Phoenix's Joker. Eventually the Giganotosaurus and Rexy duke it out in the final battle, and Rex is knocked out. While the Giganotosaurus is distracted by the Therizinosaurus, Rex's genetic memory resurfaces. She remembers what happened to her in a past life, her dominion taken away by the rival Giganotosaurus all those years ago. She regains consciousness, and with the help of the Therizinosaurus, Rexy defeats the Giganotosaurus. She becomes the queen of the dinosaurs in the Great Valley. Her vengeance is complete. Whether or not the three-way battle is symbolic of the modern versus classic dinosaur depiction debate is up to the viewer. At the end of the movie, we see Rexy meet up with two other Tyrannosaurs, those being Buck and O, the two that were in the Lost World. How biosynchronized them is a mystery, but working with what we know, Rexy must be really old at this point in her life. Eventually she will die of old age and her royalty will die with her. Buck and O also have a son named Junior. So to preserve the royal status, Rexy would have to adopt Buck and O into royalty as her heirs, the future king and queen of the dinosaurs, meaning that Junior would be next in line as ruler of the Great Valley. And so with the royal status preserved, Rexy can live out the rest of her days until her death. So now here we are starting to wrap things up. Having gone over this character arc study of the main characters, I can say that each reoccurring character overall has a semblance of a through line, even though their writing ranges from deep and complex to paper thin, and is clunky, and has plenty of flaws. Seeing Jurassic World Dominion in the theaters got me engaged with the characters, and now upon further reflection, I think the actual problem with the sequels is Colin Trevorrow's over-reliance on contrivance or luck, which seems to stem from Universal's morphing the very core of Jurassic Park and the meaning of the phrase, "life will find a way." Originally it meant that no matter how many restraints man puts on life, it'll find a way to break man's control on it. It was never supposed to mean that characters bump into each other and obtain what they need at a moment's notice by sheer luck, or that people happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, or worst yet become retarded at the worst of times, to set the story in motion, as if some cruel and unjust god is making all of it happen. Which in this case is the writer. All stories are contrived, how else are they made, but not to this extent. My biggest concern is that with Universal's reimagining of the phrase, "life finds a way," they feel they've unlocked the means to create infinite Jurassic Park films, shows, books, and games by having characters thrown together, as though they are in a tiny sandbox and act like bumbling idiots with the worst luck in the world. Other than that, the world building could have been better explained in the films as opposed to dumping it in third-party material that not everyone is going to read or watch, like the island volcano becoming active, and what really happened to Site B. A couple of more rewrites could have helped the script become more fully realized and coherent. Colin Trevorrow is far too inexperienced if he doesn't comprehend these basic building blocks in storytelling. And Shinobi 03, please see an orthodontist. Anyway, that's all I have for you now, folks. Until next time, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Testicles, that is all.